All right. Let's call this The Last of Us Part 2, Part 2. The discussion continues. In my last video, I said, basically, The Last of Us show on HBO is in deep trouble when it comes to Season 2, because there is such a huge tonal shift between Season 1 and Season 2. Season 1... And Neil Druckmann, the guy who created these games himself, before the part 2 came out, said that the first game is about love and the second game is about hate. Though I would also argue that both games are ultimately about mercy, and that somewhere along the way this thread was lost, or a coherent examination of mercy was lost in the second game because they focused so heavily on revenge. But in my last video, I talked about how there's problems that the audience will have a hard time accepting what happens in the beginning of the story. So essentially, in the beginning of Season 2, in the spoiler town, spoilers everybody. In the beginning of the second game, so what I assume would be the beginning of Season 2 or close to the beginning, Joel and company run into a girl named Abby, and when she discovers who he is, she kills him brutally, beats him to death with a golf club, right in front of his brother and Ellie. So then you spend the rest of the game playing as Ellie, looking to get revenge on Abby, this girl who herself got revenge on Joel for killing her father in the first game, though in the first game you don't really get to know either of these characters, so it's kind of a weird tacked on thing. But that's neither here nor there. Abby is the other protagonist you play as. And the goal of the game, ostensibly, is to get you to care about this person who you despise. And it works to some degree, but fails in many other ways. Partly, I would say, partly because the second game is a little more cartoonish than the first one. Abby is unreasonably strong. This was memed and mocked, and it's not that strong women like that don't exist, but she seemed unreasonably strong for the circumstances. As in, in the post-apocalypse, you would be fit, obviously, but probably also you would have some nutrition issues. You wouldn't be bodybuilder level strong. And other aspects of the game are also cartoonish. There's a weird religious cult that that uses bows and arrows, which are super, super overpowered. But the religious cult is so over the top, it feels like something out of a game that doesn't. The great thing about The Last of Us was that it was very gritty, realistic, right? Like obviously it's got video game stuff, but lots of video game tropes are still a part of it. But you still get a sense that this is a very realistic world, and a lot of the second game started to engage in more flagrant, cartoonish villains and so forth. But the revenge killing itself is where I really want to focus, because this is the moment that is essentially, and a commenter pointed this out, and I think it's a great comparison. This is the Glenn Walking Dead moment. Again, spoilers, but in The Walking Dead, at the end of Season 6, Rick and company make a huge error of judgment and a morally dubious decision to go and kill a bunch of people in their sleep. Part of this group, the Saviors, they're trying to take out the Saviors' leader, Negan, who they don't even know, have never encountered, never met. So they go and murder these people in cold blood, and then Negan and his people round them up and exact vengeance. He kills 2 people in the show. He kills Glenn and he kills Abraham. And it's very brutal, and it's very ugly, and it's hard to watch, hard to stomach, and hard to accept. For one thing, because Glenn was one of the best characters, and you wanted to see more of him in the show. You didn't want him to die such a senseless death. The other problem with this scene, though, is that Negan, and later he admits this in the show, he tells Maggie that he should have just killed all of them. And this was a real problem that I had with the show also, is that, if Rick's group had been, if somebody else had snuck into their town at night and killed a bunch of their people in their sleep, Rick would have killed every last one of them. Like, that's just what would have happened. He wouldn't have killed 2 of them with a baseball bat and let everybody else go to plot their revenge. He would have killed all of them, and rightfully so, because if you're gonna do something like that, you do it all the way. Well, in The Last of Us, the same 2 problems exist. Abby's revenge killing of Joel is extremely ugly and brutal. It's going to be hard to stomach. And we're going to lose a character and an actor who we want to see more of in the show. And this is already a show where they're killing people off every episode, basically. Tess, Bill, and Frank. I mean, it's brutal. You're not going to have a group of people traveling across the apocalypse. People are just going to die along the way. Now you're going to kill off one of the main 2 characters in a really, really horrible way. And then Abby lets Tommy and Ellie, but it's a lot of E names. Tommy, Abby, Ellie, she lets them live. She lets them go and to go plot their revenge. So we have this very similar setup to where The Walking Dead went bad and to where The Last of Us could easily go bad. I mean, they could make changes to this, and that's what I wanted to talk about also. How do you fix this scene, specifically this scene? One commenter on my last video suggested that they take more time with Abby and that they bring her into their community where she realizes later on, after she's already grown close with them, who they are, and then has much more conflict about what she's set out to do. And then you go from there. Another idea that I was thinking is that you don't have Abby kill Joel. You have it appear that she has killed Joel. And I haven't worked this out completely, but you construct a scenario where she meets Joel. Maybe he saves her, or whatever. They similar to the game, they're escaping or whatever. And somehow at some point when they both realize, who they are and what's happened, Joel then ends up sacrificing himself for Abby to save her. So she doesn't actually kill him. She is saved by him because that's what he does. He's a protector, right? He's a hero. But Ellie sees this from a distance or something and thinks that Abby killed Joel. So at this point, Abby doesn't have to spare Ellie, and Abby isn't actually guilty of the thing that we think she is, but Ellie thinks that, and this misunderstanding then leads to the what follows, Ellie's chase and hunt for Abby. This would fundamentally change the story, of course, but it would also make Abby more sympathetic, and Joel would have a less ugly departure from the show. He would exit more as a savior, as a hero, rather than as someone who was just beaten to death and tortured in front of his family. That would still be tough to swallow, right? That would be a bitter pill, and but at least that way you don't enter into these next seasons of The Last of Us with such a downer, such a bleak downer moment, which colors everything else. And you have this crucial misunderstanding at play, which informs the rest of the show. This Ellie, hunting down Abby and not believing her if she, maybe when she encounters her at some point, she doesn't believe her. She believes what she wants to believe. And then there's still room to have these flashbacks, even more flashbacks of Ellie and Joel and the time between the two games that they're apparently going to just skip over. I agree with people who say that maybe there should be a season in between these. What if there was a season in between game 1 and 2 where we got more of that journey of Ellie and Joel, but also we picked up with Abby, and her father dying and followed her character and what she's up to before we ever get to another season with this revenge and everything else, and then we get to know and hopefully connect with that character earlier and in more depth before she just whatever happens between her and Joel. Okay, so yeah, I guess I just had more to say about this than I realized. And what do you think? I don't know. Does a misunderstanding work better than this revenge? What about the notion of mercy? How do you? This is a cue for discussion in the comments. What is the nature of mercy, and how does The Last of Us inform us of this topic? I think the first game, of course, it asked us the question: Would you sacrifice the one to save the many? Right. But it also asked that question about mercy. Would you save the one at the expense of the many? And then that question of mercy gets explored further in the second game, where people are sparing one another even after these quests for revenge. So yeah. Anyways, thank you for watching. It's been an interesting week for me debating the last episode of The Last of Us, and I've chilled out now. I've taken my chill pill, calm down. So yeah, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Peace.